Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the work session of the Mayor and Council. It's Monday, June 12th, 2023, the time 6:30 p.m. This evening's work session is to discuss the Berlin Fire Company and Berlin Fire Company EMS proposed contracts for FY24. With that being said, I do want to draw the council's attention to the draft contracts we have in front of us. We reviewed those at our last meeting as well. So what I'm looking at is page 158 of our packet that has the draft agreement for fire and rescue services. I want to take us down the list of highlighted changes here. We're in section 1. Item 1, where it says BFC will meet quarterly. The recommendation would be to strike continue to meet regularly and substitute the word meet quarterly with a work group of elected officials of the town of Berlin as designated by the mayor and council. It does say to assist the town in adopting a funding formula for fire and rescue operations and capital apparatus replacement. I put a note here that I would like to discuss that with everybody because I'd like to get rid of that phrase and just keep our meetings open to items that we need to discuss as a group. I don't know how everybody feels.
Yeah, that you should strike that, my opinion.
Councilmember Nur, how's everybody else feel?
Second.
Well, we can't action in.
Yeah, I hear you. I approve. I think he's right.
Is this going to be an open meeting?
You'll have the opportunity during the regular session to make the actual changes and vote.
I thought we were,
Is this an open meeting?
This is an open meeting, but it's a
But
work
it's a work
session, so we
session.
can't action it during this time.
No, I'm talking about the meetings referred to in this document.
Those would be closed meetings, below a quorum level.
I can't agree.
Well, actually, it doesn't stipulate, so.
Well, I think what the BFC was intending to do was, apparently several years ago, there was I think 2 council members would meet with them, and I think, Dean, it was you and Troy.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to get back.
We've had some of those meetings, they've not been formalized quarterly, but we've met with the fire company and fire company EMS as needed with some council members as well.
My perception was that's what they want in this contract.
And that they want to formalize that to
Yeah.
quarterly.
I just can't agree with those meetings not being public.
We could certainly make it so that rather than it saying BFC will meet quarterly with a work group of elected officials, it could just say with the mayor and council and in a work session. I'd be open to that as well. Okay. So the wording change would be BFC will meet quarterly with the mayor and council.
now, I thought was under the impression that Mr. Gaskell and Mr. Moore had agreed to the wording. That's why we
No.
did not need to have
I didn't have
representatives.
any agreements with anyone. They just sent this over really without any discussion.
So what is the exact process here, Dave? Because right now we have just like 2 copies going around, one with our suggestions and one with their suggestions. So where does that become actually finalized?
That's what we're attempting to do tonight.
Well, but the other party's not here.
Well, and just to clean it up a little bit, what happened was back in February, David Gaskell?
Yeah, February 8th.
February 8th, the FY23 contracts were sent to the fire company and their EMS organization, and we requested changes. We did not receive any changes until what, 30 days ago maybe?
Well, if that.
Yeah, I mean, less than 30 days.
No, and that was for the coming fiscal year.
Correct. So we've tried to make it, what we all wanted to do was not have this process up against our budget adoption timeline, which is where we're at.
Right.
So in the email that you sent on February 8th, you asked for any changes to be sent to you, and you would update the document.
That's correct.
And since then, there have been several iterations of the document coming from the
Right, and
fire
what-
company and EMS.
What the issue that I have now is that, as I understood it, an agreement, well, not an agreement, a consensus was made, and we did not need them to be here.
No, that was an email that David Fitzgerald sent, but that, I don't know that there is a consensus on the agreement.
Well,
David Gaskell says there isn't. This body hasn't agreed to a contract.
My understanding is that we sent what we perceived to be a final agreement to them 2 weeks ago. And what we got back was last, I believe, Thursday, from the fire company with these 2 suggested changes, and of course with the numbers being different. And that's it.
So is the intention here tonight, you'll take what suggestions we make, write a final contract, and then we'll do a regular meeting and vote on it? Or will we have to go through this process again?
The point was to, at least my understanding,
It's an action item for this.
it's an action item for tonight.
So we would motion,
Tonight.
your motions would include the changes that we discussed during the work session. And then those changes would be written and then sent over to the fire company as the approved changes of the mayor and council.
As the contract.
And my point, yes, that's a final.
Yes.
That would be our version of
Yes.
the approved.
It's not our version, because if it's our version, we would expect something back. We're gonna, after tonight, this will be the contract.
Correct. But it will not be a signed contract from the fire company or EMS. It will be it's our proposed contract until it's executed by them as well.
so we're taking what they've written and putting our stuff in it to send back.
No,
That came out of nowhere, my goodness.
I thought the last, 3 weeks ago, I thought we agreed we were going to meet quarterly with a work group of elected officials.
Well, that's it.
That's what they had suggested, yes.
I thought the discussion was to strike the work group and just put mayor and
So
council.
that's what Dean was.
Vice President Burrell has suggested that change.
Yeah, just wonder how fair that is without them here, of course, and we agreed upon it 3 weeks ago.
Well, in their defense, what they had requested was they wanted a place where they could speak a little bit more candidly, they said. So I do want to be cognizant of that.
You almost have to do it from the back.
Thank you.
I'm just saying, I was under the impression that I thought we hashed out pretty much the contracts at the last work session, and the fire company and the EMS were okay with the wording, with some of these changes that Dave and Joe worked out. But now we're here changing stuff, and I don't think that's exactly fair.
Well, the differences, hold on. The differences are what you see either highlighted or underlined. So in number 1, we just discussed something that is a potential change, right? And number 2, I believe, and this is something we all discussed as well, where you see at least 7 business days prior to the meeting with the mayor and council. That was discussed at our last meeting with the fire company here, and Councilmember Nur had brought that up. So,
And they were okay with that.
well,
Do you have a problem with the meeting being public?
I don't necessarily have an issue with the meeting being public. What I have an issue with is that we're changing things without them having an opportunity to comment.
But they changed things without
Us?
having.
but the two, there wait a minute, there were really only 2 changes. And those changes, they did speak to those at our last work session.
So basically what I'm saying, and I'll be quiet about it, is last year we had a situation where there were 2 copies of the agreements floating around. We signed one, they had another one that they signed that was different. In my opinion, this should have all been worked out with legal, and then we approve it here, or at the open session.
yeah, but it can't, we're the group that works it out.
It was my understanding we had already worked it out.
At the last meeting, we really just read through the contract and talked about a couple points. There really
At the
wasn't an
last work
opportunity, there really wasn't an opportunity for us to discuss as a group. So that's why this is here right this moment, is because we needed a chance to
Right.
work out some of those details together.
Okay.
And we started it back in February with the
Neither here nor
intention
there.
of not having this.
The fire company asked to meet at 6, and we had a prior obligation, so
And this line in blue is newly added.
Correct.
Up down.
No.
no, that's been there for,
If you see the comment ZT2, that's me. So where it says commented ZT2, that's me. And commented MD1 is Mary.
That's.
I don't know if we're overcomplicating things.
I think we are.
And let me just say this, and I think I already did, maybe I wasn't clear. This contract is what we sent them, and it was our final version, our final draft. And the only two changes that they wish to make are in section 1, paragraph 1, they wanted to meet quarterly with a work group. And in section 1, paragraph 3, where they wanted to have notice of new development activities a little bit earlier.
Correct.
That's all that's on the table here.
And then the only other item is financial.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made a few things that I wanted to discuss with the body,
Right.
which are section 1, item 1. Section 2, I added the item that was discussed in section 2 and section 1, item 2, and item 4. You will see at least 7 business days prior to, which is what we had discussed previously.
We agreed to.
Correct. And then outside of that, I added a note in section 2, item 4, where it says, just as a note for them, that this funding needs to be allocated, it's talking about the ARPA funds, within FY24 to ensure the town of Berlin remains in compliance with ARPA. That was just something I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. It's not changing any of the content.
If I may, at about 10 minutes before this afternoon, Dave Fitzgerald sent an email to this entire group, and it read, excuse me, I just spoke with Regan Smith, who is substituting for Joe Moore. He spoke with Dave Gaskell, and neither of them have any legal concerns on the contract. As Mr. Gaskell advised Mr. Smith, it is now just a financial decision of the mayor and council.
That's not what I advised them. Mr. Smith asked me if there were any major issues, and I told him, I said, you know, there are only 2 changes other than the money, and they were discussed at the last work session. I said, I don't know if the council is going to agree with that, but I don't see that as a big obstacle.
One more
Those were my
paragraph.
words to Mr. Smith.
One more paragraph I'd like to read because I think it's relevant. I have not heard any additional comments this weekend as to the final documents submitted, as all changes we have either discussed via exchange of documents via the attorneys or at the work session have been incorporated.
So then, what I'm saying is, this in blue, to assist the town in adopting a funding formula for fire and rescue operations and capital apparatus replacement, is agreed to. It should not be changed without.
And that was in last year's contract.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That is my understanding. These were the last documents, and they were sent to this group as well as Mr. Fitzgerald, the attorneys. That's how I am interpreting this, that these versions are acceptable.
And it's certainly up to the group. I put it in as a highlighted mark to leave the meetings more open to questions that we have and items that they would like to discuss. It's up to you whether or not you want to keep them in there or not. I just flagged it as something to discuss with the group.
I just think that's too restrictive.
I agree with you.
If it's in the current contract, we don't go by it anyway.
Correct.
I mean, I actually do think we need a funding formula because I think it takes politics out of it. I would much rather see a formula, but I know that's been discussed. But, so my point being, if it's in the current contract, we don't, since I've been here, we haven't talked about a funding formula in any of our quarterly meetings. So it's almost like it's germane, I do decide that Jack would be.
If you'll go, I don't mean to interrupt you, Steve, but if you go to page 161, which is the EMS contract, and look at that paragraph, they added that we would discuss other topics to share information regarding EMS operations.
Well, that,
And perhaps we should put that clause in the BFC contract.
Or just do away with all of them and just say that we're going to meet quarterly
Keep an
to...
open agenda.
Correct.
That's
Public meeting.
I believe the funding formula was part of the matrix study. Just FYI.
Yeah, to keep referencing back to.
I mean, I'm not trying to make a mountain here, but what, if we decide to keep, if the group decides to take it out, Okay, if we keep it in, maybe we can just add something to this, run that by them. I don't think they would have a huge problem with adding whatever's on the EMS side to the fire side. Well,
That's what my suggestion is.
yeah, I'm just echoing it. So something that you want for the open session, or the regular session.
All right.
Steve?
Yeah, no, I think that sounds like very reasonable.
Then, looking at the agreement in fire, we talked about section 1, item 1 and 2, 3 and 4. We need to talk about section 2, item 2, which is the amount that we can fund. And the total grant amount that we have that can be dispersed between the two entities is $400,000. So the number that's in here, Mary has highlighted. Do you want to discuss that?
This is essentially the same number as last year. Last year's, both figures, fire and EMS, had pennies assigned. I've just rounded them.
Are we talking, what, page 163?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at 150 million, but 163 is the other side of it.
Yeah.
So last year it was 116,960 and some change, I just rounded it.
The fire, it's important to note that the fire company did request $200,000 for this though. But I really don't know where we can come up with that funding in the available budget that we have for FY24.
So in one of the litany of emails that we got on this, there was information about if the funding stayed at this number, that services may only be provided through January. That that's what they're going to want in the contract. So I'm curious what this group thinks of that idea. And then the idea, I guess the concept was, if I read that correctly, was to revisit it after the start of the calendar year for a new contract.
Well, it's important to note that if signed, this agreement does say in the general terms, section 3, that the parties here to acknowledge that the terms of the conditions of the agreement are necessary for transparency and accountability to the citizens and taxpayers of the town of Berlin, and that the goal of this agreement is to provide funding for fire and rescue services for the contract period July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. So it is for a 12-month period.
Right.
So I think that's an important note.
Yeah.
And that I will also mention to the group that if you go to, once again, operating on page 160 of our packet and page 3 of the draft fire agreement dated 6/8/2023, you'll see in section 2, item 4, where it says American Rescue Plan Act funds have been designated and reserved for fire and rescue capital items in the amount of $220,000 in fiscal year 2023. That is technically the town's
Yeah.
money that can be reallocated. So if there's an opportunity where this only covers up until January, my recommendation to the group would be to utilize those funds. So,
And when are they, I think, when are they supposed to hear back from that grant?
that I can't say. I think they were thinking October, yeah, but that's awful tough.
Yeah.
All right, in an effort in time, let's just move to the EMS agreement, take a look at that together. Section 1, item 2 is the topic that we just discussed, which is the quarterly meetings and whether or not we want that to be a work group or the entire council as a work session. Plus, if we want the caveat to remain to assist with the town funding formula, or as they added, and other topics to share information regarding operations.
I would suggest that it be a work session.
And Vice President Burrell is recommending the same recommendation from the fire contract, which would be a work session.
So in the work session, if we go back to their statement, and I don't want to keep going back to that again, but their statement was, in a work session, you can't be as candid, for lack of a better term. Is that what it was?
I believe that was their statement.
Right.
But I would say that, I mean, we're in a work session right this moment and we're working through these things. So I would argue that I think we can still cover a lot of things publicly in a work session. And if we hit an item that was, for some reason, going to grossly impact public safety, there is a caveat to the closed session items that allows us to be able to go into that direction.
So are we meet quarterly as a work group or mayor and council?
The contracts as a work group, the recommendation by Vice President Burrell will be a work session of the entire mayor and council. I have to agree. I mean, I think that the reason I personally shifted away from the subgroup is that I think it led to too many questions by the other members of the council.
That works.
And correct. And I felt that a work session was more prudent, so I do have to agree with Vice President Burrell on that.
And let's not forget that we have work sessions not because of things that may be discussed to make us uncomfortable. We have work sessions open to the public to share information with the public. And I think the more we do that, the better off we will be.
I will also note that this is the largest grant that the town of Berlin administers, and I also believe that for that reason it should be a public conversation. But we can address that during item 3E of the regular session. Moving forward, page 162, you'll see we added at least 7 business days consistent with the fire draft contract. There's a note in number 4 that talks about the same issue with the planning commission and the council regarding development activities. I think we all were in agreement to that. You'll see in number 5, I did add, if you're looking mid-paragraph, it says a statement of total emergency calls, response calls to medical assisted living facilities. I put it and Atlantic General Hospital within the town limits, and the number of shifts and days, that's all what was in there previously. I just added and Atlantic General Hospital. I felt like it gives us a more holistic picture of the activities. Once again, moving forward to page 163, section 2, item number 2 is the funding allocations 2 and 4. Item number 2, we typically split the $400,000 operating grant to cover these amounts. So Mary, I believe, if you want to...
Same as with the other agreement, this is the balance of
the
$400,000.
And then if you look at the last portion of Mary's comment there, it does have what the fire company requested, which was $381,608.18. So you can see those differences. And then I'll note item number 4 of section 2, the 125 that we provided last year for additional staffing. We had asked the county to reallocate the $122,000 from the Flower Street roundabout to assist with overcoming this challenge this year. You'll see that within the tax rate that we have, and excluding that grant, and we can talk about this when we get to open session as well, we were only able to come up with $72,500 for that allotment. So once again, if the council wanted to go higher than that, I believe, which I mean is my goal as well, to hit the 125. If we're going to do that, we got to probably take that out of our allocations that are committed to fire, because I don't know where else we'll come up with that funding.
I mean, we did give them a verbal commitment in one of our meetings. We say we
Yes.
fund them at the 125 level. So I think it's important to count.
I just honestly, and I'll take any feedback from the group, I don't know where we're going to get it.
So we have some idea, I have some ideas I'd like to put forward, but I guess that's more germane to the,
I would say the budget is probably the best place
Yeah.
to address that. But just consider that because we would like to have that feedback. Let's see, I think that concludes the agreements. Is there anything else regarding the agreements that the group would like to go over that we haven't discussed?
one aspect was for EMS, Mayor, can you put forward the, a handful of events, maybe half dozen events for the, forget exactly, how many it was?
Yes, those came based off of our emergency preparedness meetings with the police department. Those were recommended events where we should have EMS on standby.
Right.
Given the short duration that we had to review and get these contracts turned around, Mary and I discussed it. We chose to table those right this moment. It's not something that I want to see us deviate from, but
Yeah.
I don't think we have the time to negotiate that out.
Right, I think it's a good idea too. One thing that kind of struck me too is that according to the consultant study, that it mentioned that without a sort of vehicle, that crew would still be based at the fire company, which,
Right.
gosh, if I'm at Springfest in Mission City, they're there. And
So we've discussed a vehicle as well.
Yeah.
The plan was to hopefully allocate local impact grant funds to be able to purchase that. That would be a police department vehicle equipped with the ability to carry a patient. So we've spec'd that out. We do have some costs for that vehicle. Unfortunately, we just don't have the funding for it. It is a need of the town and our growing events and activities, but we just don't have the funding. But what we do have the ability is to identify, which we have a pretty good idea of where we would like to have a medical station. So there is a point where we know this is where the unit will be. And as discussed in the email that was sent to this body and to the fire company, with 2 crews, it does allow for them to have somebody stationed rather than sitting at the firehouse. They could be stationed at a particular location. So it does offer that ability. President Fitzgerald and Chief Rode, if you want to come forward, we are concluding our conversation about the agreements, but you're more than welcome to join us.
microphones on the floor.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Kate.
I was at the microphone was on the floor.
Yeah, we had some photos. So we have just gone through the draft agreements. We were settling on Councilmember Green's question about the ability to have, for the events that we had proposed earlier, to have a EMS crew on standby. And those events were identified through the emergency planning process at the town level. And I was just telling Councilmember Green that the goal would be to have one of your crews stationed there, but given the turnaround time that we had to go through these agreements together and finalize an agreement, I didn't feel like it was prudent to really try to add those right this moment. But it is something that I look forward to discussing with both of you during one of our quarterly meetings. Let's see, in the draft fire and EMS agreements, we did have one point I want us to wrap up within the next 10 minutes regarding the quarterly meetings. Vice President Burrell, do you want to share your thought on?
I just feel that the meetings should be held open to the public in a work session format.
Okay.
And with the 10 minutes, I just have one more thing. On page 159, it talks about the town shall notify the fire company of all new building and development activities. And that's something you all said should happen. And not necessarily here, but I think this needs to be just a little more formal. We need to say how we're gonna be notifying the fire company and what we expect back within a time that's not gonna hinder the planning or the operation of the planning commission, because it doesn't make sense to provide you with this information. The plans are set, and then you would like input. So if we could just get this a little tighter so that it will not impact the operation of the planning commission or the development. And at the same time, take into consideration the most valuable input that you folks can offer.
And Mr. Burrell, if I can offer this, we did have that in there. And that's where this back and forth is time consuming. After we met on May, whatever day it was, 25th or whatever day, when we replied back to the town, we put that in there, very detailed, exactly what you just said, notification, and we had that back in so many, we had that in there. But when the town sent something back through the attorneys, you all took that out.
Well,
So
I
we
would
took
not-
that.
I would not want my comment to hold up the execution of this document. But however, going forward, this could be a consideration of how we operate, because your contract is different from sometimes your operational plan. So I'm saying we need to have a plan of operation.
And we're fine to add those sentences back, Vice President Burrell. And I will say, the chief still has that on his desk, but we did communicate with the planning director. He gave us the timelines of the packets, and we are feverishly working on the very first one. He sent us 2 developments. We worked on that. The chief unfortunately had some personal commitments over the weekend. And as soon as he reviews the document, it will be to the planning. But we know the schedule, Vice President Burrell, thanks to you, Planning Director.
Good.
So we know what days the packets, just like we know the council packet, is the Wednesday before the.
Well, good.
So we will comply with that if you're okay with leaving the contract so we don't muddy it up again.
Yeah.
You just have, we know when they are, and we will
Okay.
abide by that. And if you want to make sure that gets added for next year,
Yeah.
we'll make a note of that, because we did have it in the May
Thanks.
25th document.
Dave, I have one comment, but I
Oh.
think Dave
Yeah.
Engelhardt has something.
Dave's got something.
Yeah.
Engelhardt.
Currently, Mr. Fitzgerald and I spoke. He came after that May date in to see me and talked about he hadn't received any. I said, well, we haven't had any commercial or multifamily projects for quite a while at that point, just single-family homes. So I email him when we have packet materials. The next ones for Wednesday, they're just concepts. They are seeking advice of the Planning Commission. They're not for site approval. They are not that far down the road yet, the 2 that we're going to hear on Wednesday night. We've also added, because he had asked that he be the email contact, Mr. Fitzgerald. Carolyn and I added him to when the packets get posted to the town website for all the public. His name is on there now too. We added that. So that gets blasted with everybody else over the constant contact, just like anybody can request it. He didn't request it, but we did it. So he gets it automatically, and I email him also as I receive them. We don't often get them, but 2 weeks before a meeting. So time is exactly what you're saying. It could be critical where we don't want to hold up the Planning Commission. We often don't have 2 weeks or sometimes less before a meeting to notify the fire company and hopefully to get some feedback before it's too late,
And we've got our draft document. As soon as the chief has time tonight after our business meeting, they suspended or changed the agenda for us to be able to slip up here real quick.
Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you, Dave.
I want to be cognizant of time.
Well, this will just be
Councilmember
real,
Ward.
it'll just be real quick. Dave, in the EMS contract, it has here for the work time with the town, to assist the town in adopting a formula, and then and other topics to share information regarding, this is the EMS operation and financial needs. Would you be all right if we added that same verbiage to the fire one and just change it to regarding fire operations and financial needs, which would be section 1, part 1?
It should be in there. I understand the EMS with me, if I grab my packet too quick. It should be, the number 1 should be the same. If they're not, that's the typo.
Okay,
Similar.
all right. Then
So it should be
then
there.
it should be there.
Good.
Okay.
This body has discussed potentially changing that to say BFC will meet quarterly with the American Council in a work session. But it's recommendation is to, or well, discussion item has been whether to remove the remaining portions of it to keep our meetings open for topics that we agree on. How would the fire company and EMS
I
feel about that?
think you need to send that verbiage to us in writing to the attorney so he can look over it.
So you and I talked earlier, we talked about having open
Yep.
meetings and being able to discuss a wide array of topics.
Right.
And I thought that was a great idea.
And that's why we had the verbiage that he said, when it said
Yeah.
other topics, so we can talk
Or we
about
could
it.
just move that from the
Just
EMS.
copy it to fire.
And it should be there, if it's not, that's a typo on
Okay.
Mr. Moore, or somebody that had.
So it should be there, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have the, because I grabbed my packet so quick as I was walking out the door.
So now, one last thing, Councilmember Green brought up, this is tying in with funding stuff as well. You're aware that the fire contract, you requested $200,000. The town's proposing $116,960. And you're aware that in the EMS contract, you requested $381,608.18. And the town's proposing $283,040. And then the request is for 4 additional providers, the ones that you have on staff already, and the town's commitment to the 125. And the town currently has, where there's also some ideas about ways to get to potentially 125, which we'll hear in the open session. But currently, we only have $72,500 available. So I just want you to be aware of those numbers. If you're able to stay, that's great. And Councilmember Green, you mentioned that a previous email may have said,
Yes, I remember in reading in one of the emails, if the fire funding remained what it was, or is listed, that a consideration for the council could be to amend the contract to the end of January and then to revisit it after the calendar year, based on the math, basically, like what's being sought and what's being given. So I think that's a consideration for us, but I guess ultimately we need to, the contracts need to be settled on our end, given to you all, and that's when the ball will be in your court, correct, as far as.
Right, and the fire company, we did get that far in our meetings, they did reiterate that if the town can only fund the 116 and some change, the contract would end on January 31st with the, because that's just the way the math worked. And that would allow the mayor and council the opportunity to see where you're funding. August, September, you get your reports and you're going through you're starting through your audit process, so you'll know how this year came out, what surplus you would have, and then we would, just 2 paragraphs amend the contract for the balance of the funding and move the contract to June 30th. We cannot make that offer for EMS. I don't like to get into personnel things in an open session, but we don't, there are personnel, but when you start amending the EMS contract and say it's going to end early, how do we recruit and retain our employees? They see the funding is cut, they saw the 125 cut. We can't get people to apply. We've had one person leave, we may have another person leave, and we put an ad out, and this is all here in open session, and you're talking about our personnel, and they won't come to work for us because you're going to run out of money. So that's why that option was not put out for EMS, because it affects our personnel. And I will tell you, I feel very comfortable about talking about our personnel out here in open session. They're valuable to us. They're 93%. 93% of that emergency medical service budget is personnel. That is those full-time employees who we depend upon, who you depend upon. And I'll say something that has hit home very hard with me, listening to Vice President Burrell in several sessions, either I watched it on tape or sitting here in the audience. The public expects the services. He said it very eloquently the night we were here about the tax rate. And you did not have a room full of people here raising Cain about the tax rate. But he said it several times. I can't quote it because he said it so well. Well, you did. You stated that the people, public, expect the services. I just can't say it eloquent. You can. And that's what the money is for. It's for 93% are for our employees, especially for EMS. And as a reminder, they are cross-trained to help our fire and rescue people, because depending on what time that siren goes off, is who is available. And it's very important, and when the public and the applicants and the employees see these things, they get concerned. We meet with our employees, regularly, individually, and collectively at budget time, and they ask us these questions. I'm going to lose my job. What's the layoff? What's the pecking order? That type of thing. It's hard for us to answer those questions.
With that being said, I understand that we have $220,000 for ARPA. We don't like to utilize those for reoccurring expenses, but this year's been a very difficult year. If you look around the room, all of our department heads have had to cut to be able to make ends meet for our proposed budget. I understand what you're saying, and I also value the personnel and the services that you provide, as do all of us. I would argue that the $220,000 may be better used to subsidize some of the funding needs that you have now, rather than something in the future. We can always get to that at a later date, but I think that having a contract number that you feel comfortable with for 12 months of service, as well as the staffing funding that you need, it's probably better to utilize that $220,000 in ARPA funds.
Well, that's, when we're done here with the work session, that's, our next section, I need to get back. They've rearranged the agenda. Chairman Slice, our vice president out of town, so Chairman Slice is running some of the meeting. When I get back, that's our budget's our next thing, like yours. So we'll bring that back to the membership. But, the fire, we can certainly amend that if that assists you all as well, getting a handle on how your FY23 is going to close out. So it's a team effort, and that's one of the things we wanted to offer for FY23. Because again, we're the vendor. We propose the contract, just like you call out for paving or electrical work. We're telling you what it costs. And you'll get the fiscal report September 30th prior to that from our accountant. It shows how our year falls out.
Year after year, we're running on fumes. Eventually, the fumes are gonna run out. I mean, we need help.
And I will say that this came out, and I did send it to the group in an email. The finance director made a good suggestion about ways that hopefully we can overcome this challenge with staffing in the future. And she's let us know what that allocation on the tax rate would be if we earmarked a portion of the tax rate for that service. So this group has that information. Unfortunately, the tax rate has been set, and it's going to be rather difficult for us to amend that and to get the tax bills out in time at the county level. But in the future, that is something that hopefully we can add to one of our quarterly meetings.
And I've got all those numbers as well. I can tell you how many cents you do for the police, how many cents you do for us. I've got all those numbers in my budget package.
All right, well, I want to be cognizant of the fact that it's 7:15. Is there anything else that the body would like to discuss for our work session? Thank you both. Are you going to linger for
So
the open
we need to get
session?
back so we can discuss what you just said. You're done with talking about contracts here in the
Well,
work
we
session?
have the approval of the contracts, which are in our open session for agenda item 3E, motion 2023-19. And that would be with the amendments that we've discussed. They would take a motion from the council to amend, but
How much time would you need to get back to us on the ARPA funding? If we want to reallocate that to general use funding?
Well, when you talk about a membership tonight, I don't know that they'd make a decision tonight, can't remember they're on the fly.
Well, when do you hear about your grant?
That would probably be in the fall. First rounds just went out.
Yeah.
So by the fall, so that might be something that is to the fall, because we wouldn't want to ruin, the grant process. Let's see how the grant process. And, as we said with the EMS budget, it'll get us started. We don't really want to change the dates because that affects our recruitment and retention. But with the fire, if you're going to do the 116, let's change the date to January 31st and revisit it in the fall as you see how this fiscal year comes out.
one thing I would say to this group, and I'll say it to you all as well, I would not recommend adjusting to a mid-year because we have no other way to change revenue for us. That's a very difficult thing for us to do mid-cycle because most of our revenue is generated from the tax rate. So it takes away a lever that we can potentially
Well, it would
utilize.
be potentially funded from your FY '23 surplus to get us through.
I understand that that's
That's
one
your decision.
potential way, but that's,
We're here to bring things, suggestions to the table, so that's our suggestion.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else from the body for our work session? If not, we'll close and then we'll re-enter the open session at 7:20. Give us about 3 minutes.